Hello, everyone. Welcome into the best place for the best takes. I'm Benjamin Cure. This is the Benjamin Cure Show on this Monday, December 2nd, 2024. We've got a packed one today. Josh Moser coming up a little bit later in the show. South Florida sports anchor, the host of Sports Extra, one of the best sports shows in South Florida, one of the only ones as well. So he's really got that market essentially cornered. He has great insight coming up on the Miami Heat, on the Miami Dolphins, on the Miami Hurricanes, even some FIU football because over the weekend they did away with their head coach. I'll let him get into that. We will get into that towards the end of this show. You can fast forward there now if you'd like. But let's start here. Let's start with what we saw last night on Sunday Night Football from Josh Allen. Josh Allen, to me, is the MVP. And I know that we've switched this conversation around a couple times. And I love Lamar Jackson, and I love Derrick Henry, and I love Saquon Barkley. And they all deserve to be in the conversation. Maybe Lamar Jackson less so after 3 clunker weeks from him. Not his best performances on the football field. Not statistically, not on tape. I think Saquon should still be the second guy, followed by Derrick Henry at 3 is my personal favorite. But Josh Allen right now needs to be talked about as the MVP because he is. He should be the lead candidate, and I believe right now he is, according to Vegas. Josh Allen has now gone to a point. It's weird because Chris Collinsworth mentioned this on the broadcast, and it's absolutely true. Josh Allen was the MVP favorite after beating the Kansas City Chiefs going into a primetime game, and then they had the bye week, and then we saw a great performance from Derrick Henry and a great performance from Saquon Barkley, and then after the bye week, it felt like everybody forgot about Josh Allen. He comes out of the bye, reminds everybody exactly who he is, in a literal movie ending in Buffalo with the way they played against the San Francisco 49ers. Just embarrassed them. Just absolutely obliterated them. And Josh Allen had 2 rushing touchdowns, had some in the air as well. Josh Allen used his legs, and Josh Allen proved why he is, I believe Lamar Jackson is the best regular season quarterback I've ever seen. There might not be a better quarterback to have right now than Josh Allen going into the playoffs. I don't think it's a hot take. This Buffalo team is the best team in the AFC, and they've officially separated themselves from everybody else, and that includes the Kansas City Chiefs. I love the Kansas City Chiefs. To me, their strength is their situational football. People say it's luck. People say it's the referees, and I think that that's super annoying, but I do believe that this team is weaker than they've been in previous years, but their situational football is going to keep them at the top of the pack, but not above the Buffalo Bills. And if these two teams met, the Buffalo Bills would give the Kansas City Chiefs the best run for their money out of any of the teams, I think, outside of the Detroit Lions in the NFL right now. It is going to come down to, can Josh Allen protect the football, and can he continue to play this mistake-free football in January and in February, hopefully, for the Buffalo Bills and his own sake. Now the Buffalo Bills are in control of their own destiny. They have clinched the AFC East once again, and they are in control of their own destiny. I think that's the big part here. And like I mentioned a couple weeks ago on this show, this should not get lost on anybody. There is now a recipe, and you're seeing this from the best teams in the league and the best quarterbacks. An elite quarterback, a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, loses his wide receiver 1, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and in the same season, or in the following season, proceeds to win the MVP and a Super Bowl. That's what Patrick Mahomes did. Josh Allen is currently on track after losing Stephon Diggs, his elite wide receiver 1, and he was supposed to get worse, and there was supposed to be a recession, and there was supposed to be an off year for the Buffalo Bills without Stephon Diggs now. And what was Josh going to do with no receivers? Josh is now in the driver's seat, in the lead for the MVP conversation right now. He will probably win the award, and his team has the best chances out of any of the AFC teams to make it back to make it to the big game and to win the entire thing, and they should. Very impressed by the Buffalo Bills. That is a real football team. That defense is great. They moved off guys in the offseason, and somehow they got better. That is a team that is doing more with less. They're well coached right now. Sean McDermott is humming. I think he's one of the top 10 coaches in the league, in my opinion. If not top 10, certainly top 12. And that is a team that deserves to be respected. And I think everybody can respect Josh Allen and this Buffalo Bills team after last night's game. The Philadelphia Eagles, to me, that is the second best team in the NFC right now behind only the Detroit Lions. To me, I would say that the Philadelphia Eagles right now, with Jalen Hurts, with A.J. Brown playing the way that he plays, a physical brand of football that is so underrated because of how well Saquon Barkley is playing right now, with that defense, arguably the best pass rush in the NFL, if not top 2, maybe top 3. That is a real defense. Vic Fangio has those boys firing on all cylinders right now. They contain Lamar Jackson. They contain Derrick Henry. They essentially pitched a shutout after the first 9. They have been insanely impressive over the course of the season. They have gotten better. And their biggest question to me, Nick Sirianni, people may scoff and say, you were wrong about him. Well, I guess most NFL media was wrong about him then too, because It doesn't matter right now. He continues to make boneheaded decisions situationally that I don't love, and they still continue to win in spite of that. So when you win in spite of that, it leads me to believe you can overcome it. Can they overcome it in the postseason? I don't know, because that's where coaching really matters, but they are one of the best teams in the league, and this Philadelphia Eagles team is going to be right there with the best of them at the end. I think if I had to rank the top 4 teams in the NFL I think if I had to rank the top 5 teams in the NFL right now, I would go Detroit Lions number 1, Buffalo Bills number 2, Philadelphia Eagles number 3, number 4 would be the Kansas City Chiefs, 5 I would probably put the Packers there. But to me, there are teams who have separated themselves from the pack. The Detroit Lions, the Buffalo Bills, and the Philadelphia Eagles are in a class of their own. And I really like the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think they're the best situational football team in the league, and that is what has saved them in spite of their poor performances so far, or their inconsistent performances, or their performances where maybe they're not playing team football, where maybe the offense isn't doing as good as they could be compared to the defense, or there's a unit that's not playing well. I like them a lot, but I cannot put them in that top 3 conversation, and I cannot put them in the same tier right now as I can the Detroit Lions, or as I can the Philadelphia Eagles, or as I can the Buffalo Bills. They have separated themselves. I think the AFC Championship and I think the playoff picture comes down to the AFC Championship between the Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs once again, maybe in Orchard Park or in Kansas City, depending on how things go. Buffalo obviously has the head-to-head win, so that's going to matter a lot down the stretch here, depending on how they play out the rest of their schedules. And I think in the NFC, it's going to be the Detroit Lions and the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's going to be a great game. And I don't think that game is as far apart as people are making it seem, because I think Saquon Barkley running the way that he does and Jalen Hurts playing mistake-free football, that can compete with Detroit on a really nice level. That's going to be a closer game than people think. That is what this playoff picture is going to come down to, those 4 teams right now. And I think it's fair to say that we are not sure who comes out of those games right now, because I love Kansas City. I don't know if they make it back to the big game after what I'm seeing right now from Buffalo. If Buffalo plays like that against the Kansas City Chiefs won't be able to compete. And if we see this Philadelphia Eagles team play like the best version of themselves at the end of the year against the Detroit Lions, it's not as much of a cakewalk as people want to make it seem for a very good Detroit Lions team. I want to move on right now to what we saw in college football this weekend, because there was a lot of talk about banning the flag, planting at center field and all that. To me, it's interesting to see how fans complain that college football has changed so much, and NIL and the transfer portal has taken the passion out of the game, and these young athletes and young fans don't care as much anymore as they used to. I call BS. I see what we saw this weekend during rivalry weekend, teams planting the flag on their opponents' fields, that much passion, the aggression, the fighting, the brawl on the field after the fact, the way that fans are storming the field once again. And I say to those people and to those critics of college football and what it has become, I don't think college football has ever been more exciting. I don't think there's ever been more passion. I think the fans are just as passionate right now as they've ever been. And to say that you miss this old version of what college football was because you don't get your old Big 12 or Pac-12 rivalry anymore during week 4 or 5, I think is totally BS in my opinion. College football right now is the best and the most exciting it has ever been, and it's because of the changes that have been made. It's because of the NIL. It's because of the transfer portal. College football will always have its rivalries. It will always have its feel. It will always be its own thing, and I love what I saw this weekend. I will say the Michigan thing, the Michigan-Ohio State situation really pissed me off. To me, I understand Jack Sawyer is the leader of that Ohio State team, and I respect him a lot, and I think he's going to be a great player at the next level. But you cannot get as pissed as he got about the team and about Michigan planting their flag at the middle of your field when you lost as a 20-point favorite. That is the reality. They are your arch nemesis. They are your arch rival. There's been this rivalry going on since before my lifetime, and Michigan ended up winning a game convincingly there at the end. I know it wasn't a huge margin, but convincingly, 13-10. They were a better football team. You lost to a team that could not throw the football in Michigan, and they get the better side of that rivalry, and they've now beat you multiple times in a row. And I think Jack Sawyer and I think this Ohio State team, I mean, they just showed no fight during the game. How are you going to get pissed off? Ohio State showed more fight after the football game than they did during. And I think, to me, that is more embarrassing than Michigan planting their flag at center field. Michigan deserves the right to be able to do that. Now, should you maybe not do that? That's a question for somebody else. Quite frankly, I think it should be allowed. I entirely disagree with the narrative that's being put out there right now in the media or by the NCAA that they are considering banning the planting of the flag at center field. They also wanted to ban fans storming the field. It's one of the best parts of college football. You are trying to actively take away from the culture of college football, and then you're blaming NIL, and you're blaming the transfer portal, and you're blaming young fans who don't care as much as they used to about not caring and not being invested, when you take away all the things that make fans passionate and invested and rewards that passion. Moments like what we saw on Saturday across college football are what makes college football great. Michigan did an amazing job. They ended up they deserved the right to plant their flag. Michigan played harder for 60 minutes than Ohio State did. Ohio State had 60 minutes to fight back, and they had 60 minutes to prove they were the better football team. They didn't, and they ended up showing more fight in the 12 minutes after the game than they did during the 60 minutes of the game. Ohio State should be embarrassed. Ryan Day should be embarrassed because you proved all the narratives out there right this weekend saying your team isn't tough enough, because they weren't. They got out-muscled and beat at the line of scrimmage, as they have been for 4 years in a row now, 3 years in a row. And I think there should be a conversation about Ryan Day stepping down at the end of the season if they don't make it as far as we think they should. If they don't look convincing, or they don't play well in the postseason, or they don't win a national championship, yeah, there should be a conversation about Ryan Day. And I think the perfect candidate is waiting in the wings. Forget Mike Vrabel going to the Jets. I think he likes Aaron Rodgers, but not that much. And forget Mike Vrabel going to the Raiders just because Tom Brady, his former teammate, is now a minority owner. To me, the best fit, and I think Ohio State fans would be content with this, is if the Ohio State football Buckeyes end up losing or not making it as far as we believe they should this postseason, I think you fire Ryan Day, and I think you move on to Mike Vrabel, who's a better football coach, who's a better situational football mind, who's better with the X's and O's, who's probably going to be a better recruiter than Ryan Day, and who will certainly be a better motivator of men, and will certainly do a better job of building the program on toughness as a cornerstone rather than whatever Ryan Day is doing, because what Ryan Day has done has not worked for several years now. He got one win against Michigan and I was going to say never looked back. No, he looked back. And they've dropped, I believe, 4 straight to Michigan. It's a problem. And I think Ryan Day, there should be a conversation on Ohio State right now about whether or not he's the guy. And if they lose, or they go out ugly, or they go out sad in this postseason, if you think that the Ohio State football Buckeyes are not going to consider Mike Vrabel, an alumni, coming back to be their coach right now when he is a free agent and he is available, you're not reading the tea leaves right now, and that's my thoughts on that. I want to move over to our interview with Josh because we don't have a lot of time. Can't wait to see what he has to say about everything going on in South Florida sports. Let's take it to that. So today I'm joined by a special guest and South Florida sports guru, Josh Moser. He is the sports anchor at WSVN. He's also the host of Sports Extra. Josh, great show yesterday. Obviously, you addressed a lot across the South Florida sports landscape. Let's start with the Miami Hurricanes. I know we've got a lot to talk about in the NFL, but it feels like the Miami Hurricanes is probably the most heartbreaking story for Miami fans across South Florida today. What went wrong?
Well, really, it's just the defense. You've got the number one offense in the league. You have arguably the best quarterback in the nation in Cam Ward, and you just can't give up those amount of points at Syracuse. It's a great quarterback. He's going to get a look in the pros last game, but just the defense has so many issues, and I'll put some of it on Mario Cristobal again. And to me, kicking a field goal at the end of the game instead of going for it on 4th down just makes no sense to me. And you go from basically kneeling a game away last year to now this. It just feels like a complete letdown for the season after everything that they've gone through. And your heart breaks for somebody like Xavier Restrepo, who's been phenomenal. And we'll see what happens here. Heather Dinich thinks that they're somehow going to get into this college football playoff as an at-large team. And we'll find out, I guess, next Tuesday if they're in or they're out.
This felt like an older team, right? And especially with Cam now on the way out, how do they adjust here? Where do they go from here?
Well, you've got Emory Williams, so he should be the quarterback. But again, it's the transfer portal, and how much money are you going to spend, and who are you going to bring in? Obviously, this team needs a lot of players, specifically in the secondary. And you're losing a guy like Xavier Restrepo, who's your best wide receiver of all time, according to the numbers. And Jacoby George most likely gone too. So you're going to need to go into that portal. You're going to need to find players. You're going to have to spend money. And I can tell you that, I have people that are, boosters in the Golden Canes that are not renewing their memberships because they are so frustrated with what took place and transpired in these 2 losses. Obviously, it's a great step for the program to turn around. I think it was 5-7, 7-5. And now this season with the 2 losses. However, this was your opportunity. And people want more.
I heard Drew Rosenhaus on Sports Extra yesterday. Great show, by the way, as always, talking about, you told him to take off his alumni cap, but he kind of still had it on for that. He was making the case for Miami in the playoff, right? The best quarterback, an offense that had been electric, a defense that had left fans wanting more. Is there a chance that this team, if they do make it into the playoff, will have the opportunity to compete against what looks like it may be Texas and some of the projections, or is that just a pipe dream at this point?
I mean, we're going to find out. I mean, here's an opportunity. The rhetoric all year out of their control is their strength of schedule and the fact that they really didn't play anybody. And, you know, it's hard to be perfect in a season and to go undefeated. So, here is your chance to prove that you belong. And I think that all of the players on this team would relish in that opportunity. Unfortunately, it's just out of their hands if they're going to get that opportunity or not.
It's hard to go undefeated, like you said. I think the parity is more apparent than ever because of the portal, because of NIL. I also feel like maybe there's not that because of the expanded playoff. I don't know if there's that same oomph in terms of like we can't lose a game. I think that stress was almost helpful to guys like Kirby Smart and Nick Saban last year. Feels like people are a little more okay. You're never okay losing, and players will always say you're never okay losing, but it feels like the energy in the locker room if you're down by a touchdown. And a lot of these games across college football, not just in South Florida, it's like we can afford to lose one or two. It just felt like that to me this year. You mentioned some of the alumni being a little bit frustrated. Is there frustration, you think, more with the coaching, more with Cristobal? Because situationally, he makes decisions that make you want to pull your hair out as a fan, as an alumni, as someone who just cares about the program? Or is it more so maybe with the players or the recruiting on the defensive side of the football? Where is the frustration?
I think all of those elements are tied together. I mean, Mario's rap coming out of Oregon, I hate to say it, but from everyone that I spoke to there is that he was a great recruiter, but he struggled in the X's and O's. And we have seen mistakes happen, but that's part of the game. It's part of coaching. Mario's human. I mean, if you were able to zoom out for a second, I mean, look at the turnaround from this program and the 3 years that he's been in charge. It's been phenomenal. If you want to stay in South Florida, you feel bad for Mike McIntyre, who came in at the same time, and he was 4-8, 4-8, 4-8, was just relieved of his duties at FIU. Great coach. I covered him when he was in charge of Colorado a long time ago. So, the X's and O's, Mario, there's always room for improvement, but you could say that about Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins right now. We see it. We watch it every week. You love the fact that they were able to go get Damian Martinez. You love the fact that they were able to go get Cam Ward. So from a recruiting perspective, I think he's done a phenomenal job. Obviously, injuries play a part of everything in football. I think Ruben Bain hasn't been the same since he was injured earlier in the season. To me, he's, was a projected first round pick coming into this year, and he's got another year left, so he'll be back. And then with the coaching staff, I'm more Dolphins. I'm around them a lot more than I'm with the Canes, simply because one thing that I really don't like, just being honest with you, and it's Mario's decision, it's his program, the access is extremely limited from a media perspective. So the ability to be at practice and to truly understand the culture, I mean, these kids are only doing Zoom interviews. I personally think that it's hurting them in the long run. It's protecting the program, but the old adage of you practice like you play. I want to be there. I want to see with my own eyes. I want to feel that culture, and you can do that much more so, with the Dolphins. I went to USC. I was there with Pete Carroll. Shoot everything, stay, and you were able to see what actually transpired. And the team was phenomenal coming off a national championship in 2005. Obviously, the loss to Texas. I mean, you compare those teams and the talent that you had on those teams versus Miami now, it's night and day. But obviously, we're in a completely different era. And just from the growth of technology, social media wasn't what it was today. So I understand why you limit all of that. But look, you're in the ACC. You're not in the SEC. So
exactly.
This is, what the plan was. This was your third year. Everything was in front of you. And it's, I guess, where the fan base and where everyone is frustrated the most is that it was all there for the taking. And self-inflicted wounds caused you to lose it again. And we see it again and again. And its mistakes keep happening over and over and over again. And it finally caught up with them. But luckily there's still a little bit of hope. And, you hope that they can squeeze in as, maybe the 12th team. It's just, we'll see what happens with Clemson SMU. If Clemson wins that game, I find it hard pressed to see if the Canes can sneak in. And I think at that point, we would see Cam Ward, done and not playing the bowl game.
I know, and that's the toughest part, I think. The best quarterback that Miami has had in my lifetime, I wouldn't dare to say ever, because I know there's a lot of OG fans that would say, hey, history started before 2000. But yeah, I mean, he's bound for the NFL. I don't know if it's the Giants. I don't know. It's not going to be the Jags, but he's got options, right? And it looks like right now he's mocked between pick number 3 and 4. Very happy for him. But as someone who grew up 10 minutes away from the campus, my mom's an alumni, like, it hurt to see the fall off this season. And the worst part is you kind of saw it coming. End of games, they were trailing a lot. You had Cam Ward put you back into games that, quite frankly, you didn't deserve to win. And there were sometimes last 2 games where situationally quarterback can't do anything. It comes down to the coaching, and they came up short once again. I want to mention FIU, my current school, because you mentioned it here quickly. Mike McIntyre, obviously no longer the head coach there. That broke over the weekend. That had been assumed because of some of the chatter and things that had happened, not just on the field, but off the field now. Got a little bit ugly there towards the end with some former players coming out on social media and talking about their experience with the program. Where do they go from here in terms of their head coaching search? Because I, as someone who covers high school football down here in South Florida as one of my many gigs, like, I would love to see Coach Teddy Bridgewater be the guy on the mic and under center with a headset on for FIU. I don't know how realistic that is, though. Have you heard any names that you think would be good for South Florida? And where are they leaning right now, if anywhere?
Yeah, quite honestly, I haven't. College football is really not my focus. I'm specifically more Dolphins, Heat, and Panthers currently. So, it's tough to find a coach for mid majors. It's just really challenging, especially from a financial perspective in this NIL era. And the reality is, with receiver just transferring too, we saw Keon Jenkins enter the portal too. So your 2 best players, they're automatically gone. So what do you do? Can you try to recruit these 2 and 3 star kids and have them commit to a 3 to 4 year program and turn them into something? That's kind of what Ferentz did at Iowa, where you have these big schools in the Big Ten. He's like, let me take, the average guy, but we'll make him great and we'll coach him up. But now you don't have that luxury anymore. And I mean, shoot, we saw that with Tom Herman at FAU getting canned too. And at one point, I mean, he was up for some huge, huge jobs. And obviously coached at Texas, was an assistant at Alabama. So FIU can go in a lot of different directions. The best thing that I would, that they're aware of, and I'm sure Scott Carr knows, is that this area produces more NFL talent than any other place in the country. And it's about keeping your kids home. And it's going to be tough, though, with Miami in the backyard and with all of the pipelines to the SEC, which puts the most amount of players into the NFL, which is the ultimate goal. You've got the pipelines from St. Thomas Aquinas and Broward, Heritage, Chaminade, Madonna. I mean, they all have those webs. It's how do you create those webs to FIU? And from a financial perspective, that's extremely challenging. You're the little brother.
You're cash strapped, big time.
Big time. It's just you're in a really, really tough spot. And as a head coach, I think you really have to temper expectations, and I would be very curious to see what they decide to do. We'll see what happens. Mike McIntyre was brought in to rebuild the programs. That's what he was known for. Did it at San Jose State, tried to do it at Colorado. And then obviously that was the image or the goal here. And, if you're 4-8, I love the guy. He's a great guy. But yeah, just a lot of things outside of his control and outside of the program's control. It's just, it is what it is. You're in an uphill battle at all sports at FIU.
It's true, and that's something they're going to have to overcome. Speaking of overcoming things, especially narratives, the Dolphins end up not being able to overcome the cold weather narrative on Thursday Night Football on Thanksgiving in heartbreaking fashion, and what I expected would be a loss for them going into Lambeau against the Packers, to be honest, which is a place that you came from and covered closely, obviously. I knew that run game was going to be electric with Josh Jacobs. I knew it called for it was a cold game, not a snow game like the one we saw on Sunday Night Football, but it just felt like the recipe was there for the Dolphins Dolphins to lose, just not lose as badly as they did. And once again, I feel like it's the defense that gets all the eyes. You talked about it last night on Sports Extra. The tackling was putrid. It was pathetic. It was tough to watch. How do they get better defensively? Because it feels like the offense, Tua played well, right? But the rest of the offense isn't clicking. Like Drew Rosenhaus said, they don't have the downfield passing game as a true element or as a true threat this year. But how do you fix the defense? Because you can't win with a defense like that.
Yeah, I mean, that just goes back to technique and fundamentals. And obviously, everything's amplified when you're in cold weather. Everything gets harder. But I mean, we saw in that Sunday night game, I mean, there were players on defense, coming downhill and they were thumping. And that mentality seemed absent in the game Thursday night at Lambeau Field. I mean, Jordan Brooks called the defense soft. You're missing Anthony Walker, your middle linebacker, who replaced David Long, who was the captain on this team. So I think it's super bizarre that you cut a captain, just very unique. But this team loves Anthony Weaver. We're still talking about arguably a top 10 defense in the league. Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell, who have been your stalwarts up front, who have been arguably a top 5 defensive tackle duo, were nowhere to be found. And they miss just kind of those splash plays. And what this team's really missing is a second cornerback with Fuller being out. Jalen Ramsey's all world. They call him Gold Jacket for a reason, and he has had a phenomenal year. He's worth every penny of the extension that he was given. However, on that other side, when Kader Kohu has to play in coverage and not in that nickel position, they're just at a loss. Cam Smith is a second-round pick, hasn't shown anything, but with Fuller with the concussions, he's a huge piece. And then Jordan Poyer, I love the guy. He's just been so inconsistent. And you need him, quite honestly, to play better. And when this team is good, they're getting pressure on the quarterback, and Jordan Love could do whatever he wanted to do, and they couldn't stop the run. And, it was just a frustrating off night all around. And how much is the cold a factor? It's tough being outside in the cold. But you look at it, there's guys that have done this before. You did it in college from certain schools, and frankly, you knew what you were going into, and most of these players experienced this last year in that game at Kansas City in the playoffs. So it's not like you haven't seen this before. So I think this is more of an internal look at yourselves. Can you fix this? But right now, Ben, even if they were to somehow run the table and win their final 5 games and get to 10 wins, that's not guaranteed that they're even going to make the playoffs.
So I want to go there. Miami's playoff hopes are now razor thin. Like you mentioned yesterday, you've got to win out, and even then, it's not a guarantee. What would Miami need to do to sneak into the playoffs, and can they even make noise in the playoffs if they make it in?
I think it depends on the matchup. I mean, they can obviously, they've got to win all 5 games. We'll see what happens. But yesterday certainly didn't help them with the Colts somehow coming back against the Patriots. And then the Steelers continue to impress a lot of people. At this point, it's just you have to win in dominant fashion. You have to stop making these mistakes. We were talking about, the Canes earlier in the show, and just how we keep saying the same mistakes being made over and over again. So here's an opportunity for the Dolphins. Today's, Monday. They come in, they correct the mistakes. They look at the tape, as they say, and then you want to see that change. You want to see that progress, and you don't want to see them repeating issues. So if they just have to play a lot better. I mean, they have multiple Pro Bowlers on this roster. They brought back everybody. There's continuity there. So just play like you're capable of. And, they just got to figure out what to do with that second corner position, because teams are picking on them. And Anthony Weaver was brought in for a reason. And I know Dolphins fans don't want to say this, but I mean, shoot, you look at Vic Fangio, who was not a fit here. And granted, he was interviewing for head coaching jobs, when he got the job here initially with the Cardinals. And he's putting together probably a top 3 defense right now in Philly. They look absolutely phenomenal. And you're questioning why, didn't he work here if he's doing that there? And, he can tell you it's the players. Some players love him. Some players hate him. But I know that the players love Anthony Weaver. They love playing for him. And now they need to perform. And it's a results business. And frankly, we haven't seen results.
And I think a lot of fans would hear that and be super frustrated because Vic Fangio, like you said, you watched that game yesterday against the Ravens. I mean, man, that is one of the best defenses in the league. They're on some given weeks, they're top 2 and they're not 2 is what it's felt like here as of late. And the players love Anthony, right? And they didn't love Fangio, but they were winning more, or they weren't winning more with Fangio, but Fangio seems to find more ways to win when he's not here with that defense. It's a weird situation. The thing with the Miami Dolphins in my lifetime is I've always felt like Miami Dolphins fans, and this is the reason why I've never considered myself a Dolphins fan, you're sort of marrying yourself into mediocrity because you're never going to be bad enough to get a great draft pick, and you're never going to be good enough to really like. I never thought they would win the division against Buffalo, and I didn't think that even on the offhanded chance that Aaron did well this year, I didn't think they would be able to beat out the Jets in a head-to-head game late in December or in January. That's just the way that I felt about it. Fans and probably coaches will also say we're going into week 14 now. The season's not over yet. Is there a conversation this offseason about Tua or about Mike McDaniel? Tua just got paid. I think Mike McDaniel is one of the best offensive-minded coaches in the league, but this is not working. And is there any sort of feeling, have you heard any murmurs that, you know what, maybe we would consider going in a different direction in either of those positions, or are they sort of locked into both?
I think those conversations definitely have not taken place yet. As far as to my knowledge, I think depending on how the season finishes, we might start to have that conversation. But realistically, look, you just paid Tua $200 million. No one's going to take on that contract. I truly believe that Mike McDaniel is the best coach for Tua, and I think that that duo will remain together. Mike McDaniel got the contract extension, during right before the start of the season. So I see them as a pair. I see them together here in Miami, next year, regardless of how they finish here. And if you look at it from Chris Greer's perspective, or you could even go to Stephen Ross, the owner of the team, Tua missed those 4 games. You were 1-3 in those games. And you saw a progression from Mike McDaniel of changing this offense, realizing that the defense was taking away the explosive plays with Tyreek and Waddle, and has now molded it into this methodical underneath approach. So now can you put those two offenses together? But you saw the arc of Mike McDaniel's coaching change, which is a positive sign. And you've seen Tua by the numbers statistically as a top 5 quarterback in the league. You just haven't seen the wins come yet. So to throw it all away and to start over, I guess from a South Florida perspective, is Cam Ward going to be better than Tua next year in the NFL?
Probably not.
That's the question. So, I think that those two would definitely, be together. I think you have a lot of question marks. Bradley Chubb, I believe, has an out in his contract coming up. We don't know what he is going to be like coming off this torn ACL. You miss him. You miss Jalen Phillips, who got injured. They need a pass rusher. They need a cornerback. You're probably going to see Raheem Mostert go away. You love Jalen Wright and what he can bring with Devon Achane in the backfield. Curious to see what they do with Alec Ingold. You're going to need somebody to replace Teron Armstead. You hope that Austin Jackson can come back, who's now on IR, but you need guards. You need guards desperately. And the way that this offense is orchestrated is because of the players that they have on the offensive line. And, you want those down the field explosive plays. Well, you need time in the pocket in order for the receivers to get down the field. And simply with how this offense is structured, that it's not allowing for that. So they know their weaknesses. They built an offense around that. So it's how do you want to build your team? And I've spoken to multiple general managers around the league, and they tell me that the most important pieces are the big guys on the line. If you can find a big guy that can move, that is the rarest person to find, and it is most important to the team. You can always find a running back. You can always find a wide receiver. But can you find those special offensive linemen? And the teams that do, they're more than likely the most successful teams in the league.
That's what it feels like. And I think the frustrating part is there's, like you just mentioned, and you went through the whole list, feels like there's more questions surrounding the Dolphins than answers. And I think you hit the nail on the head is fans can feel frustrated all they want with Mike and with Tua, but they are the best pair that we've got right now, and they're going to work best together, right? So you've kind of got to stick with it. Moving on to the Miami Heat, who played tonight against the defending champions. You've heard a lot of chatter about the Miami Heat this season. I heard, UD has got a great podcast, and he's kind of been breaking it down. And we're sort of learning more about Pat Riley's philosophy, I feel like, through that podcast, through a third party. Is there any chance that Pat looks at this team and is just, he wants them to go, he wants to see what they give us this season before he makes any decisions on guys like Jimmy or even a Bam moving forward? I feel like Bam is a cornerstone, but Jimmy is the question mark about what happens this offseason. Where are they right now?
Well, Pat Riley is very good at guiding the media and public platforms to give up a perception. So I would definitely not take what he says on the podcast at face value. So we'll start there. He's the architect, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And it really goes to with Andy Ellisberg. They know how it works, and I think a lot of it is on Spoke too, who is without question, a top three coach in the league, and if not arguably number one. Um,
Agreed.
to me, Bam is a cornerstone of this team, and I think that we will see a shift. We'll see what happens here. I know at least at the beginning of the season, with you want to call it the second run it back, since the NBA Finals, they wanted to see what this team could actually be like, and could Terry Rozier and Tyler Hero work together in the backfield? And we've seen Tyler statistically have his best season as a pro right now, and Terry's been struggling a little bit. But the big question mark is Jimmy. When Jimmy's healthy and Jimmy wants to play, he's a top five player in the league. Last night we saw him bang knees again. I doubt that he'll play tonight. We'll see what happens. I haven't seen the injury report, but second night of the back-to-back, especially on the road, that spells let's rest Jimmy for this one, even though it's against the Celtics. And I believe last night they were down. Derek White didn't play. I want to say Jaylen Brown didn't play either. So, we'll see. But, at the trade deadline, Jimmy's, what type of value does he bring? I mean, he'd basically be a rental for the rest of the season, and then he would be up for that big contract. But at this point, as he's aging out, giving him $60 million a year for an additional 3 years at the end of the year, I don't know how feasible, that is. I love the building block of Jaime Jaquez. I love what Nico has shown as a young player. And I think that there's definitely room for development with Ware and Larson, the two rookies this year. I think those were good finds. But look, right now, just to be honest, I mean, they're nowhere near where the Cavs are at. They're nowhere near where the Celtics are at. And they look like a playing team at this point.
And those are their upcoming
the
opponents too, which makes it even more frustrating.
Right. And look, if you're here to chase championships, and we know that's the goal. You hope that they can get hot like they did a couple years ago, but it comes to a point where you're going to have to make a shift. And seeing where this team is at the All-Star break, they're going to make their decisions, because realistically, the season for the Heat doesn't start until mid-February anyway. That's just kind of how it's structured. So, we'll see if these younger guys get some more playing time here, and then you hope that Jimmy can be healthy. But yeah, to me, it's time to start building the team around Bam. And with Tyler playing well, I know that he's Pat Riley's favorite player. And, Pat Riley wishes at times, he played like Tyler Hero. He were like Tyler Hero. And there was a point in time from people that I talked to that, Tyler was untouchable. This is going back to when he was the sixth man of the year. But right now, I mean, he and Bam are the team's biggest assets. So do you blow this whole thing up and start over, and then you're setting yourself back 5 years? I don't know the answer to that. That's, Pat's getting up there in age, looks phenomenal. So yeah, they have a lot of questions to be answered, and I think we're going to get a much clearer picture, as we approach the All-Star break.
I appreciate your time. One more question before we go here, and you can give me a quick response, because I really want to know. At the trade deadline of the NFL season a couple weeks back, now about a month or so back, there was not a rumor, there was a report that Tyreek Hill was the favorite, that if he was traded, it would be to the Kansas City Chiefs. Was there ever, because of your sources, was that ever a conversation? Was there ever even a chance that would happen?
There's always a chance. I don't know what the compensation would be. I have not gotten a specific answer from Drew, who represents Tyreek Hill. But yeah, there's always conversations about everyone. And, he seemed like he would be a good fit. I know that he would want to go back to Kansas City. But yeah, he's a Dolphin. And I guess that's kind of what I can say on that. Just had a baby here this weekend with his now wife. So he's got a little girl. I think he's almost got a full football team full of kids now. So he's making his way.
I could not make that joke, but you definitely can, because the position you're in. So I do appreciate the transparency.
Yeah, but look, Tyreek, you wish, him the best for him and his wife. And I think, all of us that talk sports, we forget the human element of of everything. I mean, even at the NFL trade deadline, um, shoot, like I mean, Devontae Adams is a friend of mine. I covered him in Green Bay, and just to understand what he went through personally in Vegas, and then all of a sudden to go to, New York. We'll see him here this weekend. And then, he just had a little one to, what do you do with your family? Where do the kids go to school? Like, I mean, these are all decisions that people don't think about. And yes, it's a lot easier when you got $100 million and, finances aren't a concern. But yeah, it's the NFL and sports. It's always really interesting. And to me, I'm most fascinated by the kind of behind the scenes stories, much more so than the play on the field. You love the play on the field. You love to root for those teams, but just the inner workings of how things actually come to be. And I think that's why, UD does such a great job on his podcast with Mike Miller, and the insight that they bring, and for the South Florida fans to actually get to kind of look behind the glass a little bit. That perspective is great. It's unique. And unfortunately, like even in my position, you can't really talk about these stories until after the career. You've got to keep the trust. But yeah, just a wild place. And now with betting the way it is and all this emphasis on fantasy sports, it's really crazy to how the industry, or where the industry is right now. But yeah, I can say that, conversations, are always being had about every player. And, we'll see what happens with Tyreek after the season and what, everybody wants to do, because there is always a possibility. And you just hope first and foremost that he can get healthy, because right now he's playing through that wrist injury. And I don't know how much that's affecting him, much more so than how the defenses are playing him. But you hope that he can be a little bit sharper, and you hope that, this offense can dominate a Jets team here and move one game closer, to trying to get a playoff spot. So we'll see what happens.
Josh, I super appreciate your perspective on all of that. In terms of the behind-the-scenes stuff, I think that's a conversation for another day, because that's an entire conversation in and of itself, and an interview.
Oh, yeah.
Super appreciate your time. And yeah, best of luck going forward. You've got, I think, the best sports show in South Florida. And I love how you always make it a point to not just cover South Florida. Love you talking about other teams out there and the angles that you take with the South Florida Stars, and even just some of the bigger storylines in the biggest sports that we love, like in the NFL and even in college football as well. I super appreciate your time. And yeah, best of luck to you.
Of course, yeah. And anybody watching this that has questions about getting into the industry, or, even how you started, Ben, it's amazing to see what you've been doing. And when you're still in college, it's incredible. We're in a cool time for sports. And I mean, there's so many people that, certainly have helped me, and I wouldn't be where I'm at without their help. So whatever I can do to pay it forward, please, anyone, find me on social media, ask questions, and, whatever we can do. We kind of get to go through all these experiences together. And shoot, I'm out here in Florida. It's December. We got the sunshine. I'm outside.
You're definitely showing off right now, 100%.
I mean, what could be better than this?
Who's got better than us? Nobody. And I know that's a tough line maybe for South Florida sports fans when it comes to Harbaugh and that Chargers team and Herbert and whatnot. But that's, once again, for another time. Super appreciate your time, Josh. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will be watching.
You got it, my man. Anytime.
So I want to reiterate this one more time. I believe we are at a turning point in the NFL at this point. We're going into week 14. We know who teams are. We know their identity. We know who they're not. We know who they're capable of stacking up against. To me, the top 5 teams in the NFL right now are number 1, the Detroit Lions, led by Dan Campbell, the best head coach in all of football. I would put him ahead of Andy Reid right now. One of the best quarterbacks in Jared Goff, who was at one point this season a dark horse MVP candidate. I don't think he's that anymore, but he is certainly a great leader, and he's the perfect facilitator for that Detroit Lions team, and Detroit loves him. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, the best offensive line in football, one of the better defensive fronts on the defensive side, in my opinion. Even though they lost Aiden Hutchinson, that secondary is electric to me. That is the best football team in the world right now. Detroit Lions at number 1. Number 2, I would have to say, is the Buffalo Bills, the AFC. Josh Allen is proving right now that even though he lost his wide receiver 1, he's playing as good of football as he has ever played. Josh Allen lost his wide receiver 1 and got better, and that is a testament to Josh Allen and the football player that he is. He has totally cleaned up his turnovers, and that means something. This Buffalo Bills team is proving they are one of the best teams in football. To me, they're the best team in the AFC. They beat out the best team in the AFC that we thought previously was going to be the one who ran the table, and the Kansas City Chiefs. They are at number 2. Number 3 would have to be the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia's defensive front is one of the best in the league right now. Vic Fangio is one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. That defense is firing on all cylinders right now, and so is that team. A.J. Brown is playing physical football, and it is such an underrated storyline for this Philadelphia Eagles team because of how well Saquon Barkley is doing, and then maybe some of the other noise coming from the fact that fans don't have faith in Nick Sirianni. I'm honestly taking him out of the equation. That team is so talented that right now they win in spite of his situational football mistakes. Jalen Hurts is playing mistake-free football. Jalen Hurts is playing cleaner football right now. He is taking care of the football, and I think that matters. And Saquon Barkley right now, behind only Josh Allen, should be the lead MVP candidate, or should be in second place, or should be second in the running, because what he has done this season cannot be overstated. He is one of the most valuable players in football, and Saquon Barkley is exactly what we thought he would be, and then some for the Philadelphia Eagles. To me, number 4 would be the Kansas City Chiefs. And even if I still believe that there's an opportunity for them to three-peat and to shut everybody up at the end of the year, this is not the best football team out there right now. To me, they're the best situational football team, but personnel-wise, they don't stack up against the when it comes to just ranking names and the best players in a game. They would not have a better football team than the Detroit Lions. They would not have a better football team than the Buffalo Bills. They would not have a better football team than the Philadelphia Eagles. To me, it is not disrespectful at this point in the year, knowing what we know, seeing how things have played out, to say that the Kansas City Chiefs are not better than the top 3 teams in the NFL. I would still put them at 4, though, and I think that is ultimately the AFC and the NFC championship picture right there. With that being said, I want to close out this week. Obviously, a lot to talk about. Plenty of other stuff going on this holiday season, right, as we head into the playoff picture and playoff mode for many teams. Tomorrow, we're going to get some more rankings out of the college football playoff picture. I want to see what those look like, obviously, especially after our conversation with Josh and after some of the conversations that I had this morning with other people that are not on camera regarding South Florida sports. Things are going to heat up around here pretty soon. I cannot wait to see how everything plays out. I will see you next week.